Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. There's a unique kind of fear that creeps in when you're alone in a place that's supposed to be empty. That feeling when a floorboard creaks upstairs or a shadow moves just at the edge of your vision. You try to rationalize it, tell yourself it's just the house settling or your mind playing tricks on you. But what if it's not? Tonight, we're diving into 3 true stories from people who found themselves in that exact situation, realizing with chilling certainty that the house they thought was empty wasn't. So, turn down the lights, get comfortable, and let's begin. Our first story comes from a woman named Chloe, who was house-sitting for a wealthy family in a secluded, sprawling mansion for a few weeks one summer. The house was a bit of a maze, full of long hallways, countless rooms, and strange echoes. The owners had assured her she would be completely alone. For the first few days, everything was peaceful, almost idyllic. She spent her time reading by the pool and enjoying the quiet. But then, small, unsettling things started to happen. It began with a book. She had left a specific novel on the kitchen counter, face down to mark her page. When she came back from a swim, it was on the living room coffee table, closed, with the bookmark tucked inside. She brushed it off, thinking she must have moved it herself and simply forgotten. A few days later, the TV in the master bedroom turned on by itself, blasting a news channel at full volume in the middle of the night. Her heart pounded as she fumbled for the remote, her mind racing. An electrical glitch, a power surge. She tried to find a logical explanation. The real turning point came a week into her stay. She was in the shower when she heard a distinct, heavy thud from the floor above. This house had 3 floors, and the top floor was an attic space the owners had told her was locked and used for storage. She turned off the water, listening. Silence. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She told herself it was just the old house creaking, the pipes settling, but the sound had been too specific, too solid. Later that evening, while making dinner, she felt it. That undeniable sensation of being watched. The hairs on the back of her neck stood up. She spun around, but the vast open-plan kitchen and living area were empty. She checked the locks on all the doors and windows, finding them secure, but the feeling of a presence lingered, a cold spot in the warm summer air. She decided to call her friend, needing to hear a familiar voice. As she was talking, walking through the dimly lit hallway, she noticed something that made her blood run cold. At the very end of the hall was a large, ornate mirror. In its reflection, for a split second, she saw a door she knew was supposed to be closed, the door to a small guest closet swing slowly shut. There was no draft, no open window that could have caused it. She froze, phone pressed to her ear, unable to speak. Her friend on the other end kept asking if she was okay. Chloe couldn't answer. She was staring at the end of the hall, at the now closed door, knowing with absolute certainty she was not alone. She spent the rest of the night locked in her bedroom with a chair wedged under the doorknob, waiting for the sun to rise. The next morning, she packed her bags and left, calling the owners to tell them she couldn't stay. She never found out who or what was in that house with her, but the memory of that slowly closing door in the reflection still haunts her. Our second story is from a college student named Ben, who took a summer job as a caretaker for a historic property that was being converted into a museum. The place had been a family home for over a century and was completely empty of furniture, awaiting restoration. Ben's job was simple: stay on site in a small cottage and do a nightly walkthrough of the main house to make sure it was secure. For the first month, it was the easiest job he'd ever had. The old house was eerie at night, full of strange shadows and creaks, but he got used to it. He'd walk the empty rooms with his flashlight, check the windows, and lock up. One night, during a particularly nasty thunderstorm, he started his rounds. Rain was lashing against the windows, and thunder rattled the old frame of the house. As he was walking through what used to be the main parlor, his flashlight beam caught something on the floor. It was a set of wet, muddy footprints. They were large, clearly from a man's boots, and they led from the back door, across the dusty floor, and toward the grand central staircase. Ben's blood went cold. He was sure he had locked that back door. He slowly followed the tracks, his flashlight beam trembling. The footprints went up the stairs. Every instinct screamed at him to get out, to run back to his cottage and call the police. But part of him, the part that was responsible for the property, felt he had to investigate. He crept up the staircase, his own footsteps deafeningly loud over the storm. The tracks led him down the second-floor hallway and stopped directly in front of the door to the master bedroom. The door was slightly ajar. Ben held his breath, pushing the door open with the end of his heavy flashlight. The room was empty. The footprints just ended. There were no other marks, no sign of anyone. It was as if the person had vanished into thin air. Confused and terrified, he scanned the entire room. His light passed over the large, boarded-up window at the far end of the room, and that's when he saw it. Scratched into the dust and grime on the inside of the boards were two words: "Get out." The letters were fresh, the lines sharp against the filth. Ben didn't need to be told twice. He backed out of the room, ran down the stairs, and sprinted through the rain back to his cottage, where he called the authorities. The police came and searched the entire property, but they found nothing. No sign of a forced entry, no person hiding in the shadows. The back door was still locked from the inside. Ben quit the next day. He doesn't know if it was a squatter with a cruel sense of humor or something else entirely, but he'll never forget the sight of those footprints leading to nowhere and the freshly scratched warning. For our final story, we go to a young couple, Mia and Liam, who had just bought their first home of fixer-upper in a quiet suburban neighborhood. They were thrilled, spending every weekend working on the house before they officially moved in. The house had been vacant for almost a year, and it needed a lot of love. One Saturday, they were painting the living room. They had music playing, laughing, and enjoying the process of making the house their own. Around noon, they decided to take a break and go grab some lunch. They locked the front door and left. When they returned about an hour later, they walked in and immediately knew something was wrong. The music was off. The paint cans they had left open in the middle of the floor were now neatly stacked against a wall. Lids on, their paint-covered rollers and brushes were washed and sitting in the sink. They looked at each other, completely baffled. "Did you do this before we left?" Mia asked. Liam shook his head, his expression just as confused as hers. They cautiously walked through the house. Nothing was stolen, nothing was broken. In fact, things were cleaner. The dust sheets in the dining room had been folded. A pile of junk mail on the counter was now in a neat stack. It was bizarre. They joked nervously that they had a helpful ghost, but the incident left them feeling deeply uneasy. Who would break into a house just to clean up? The letter was dated from 50 years prior. It was written by a woman named Eleanor, who had lived in the house. In the letter, she wrote about her deep love for the home and how she couldn't bear to leave it. The final line of the letter read, "This house is my only companion. I will take care of it, and it will take care of me forever." As they finished reading, a cold draft swept through the room, and they heard a soft, melodic humming coming from the hallway. It sounded like an old lullaby. They looked at each other, eyes wide with a fear that was no longer a joke. They realized they hadn't bought an empty house. They had a permanent and very particular roommate. They did eventually move in, and while the strange tidying and humming continued, they learned to live with their spectral caretaker, Eleanor, who was simply looking after her home. 3 houses, 3 very different experiences, but all rooted in that same primal fear of an unexpected presence. A quiet intruder, a phantom warning, a ghostly caretaker. It just goes to show, sometimes when a house feels empty, you should listen to that feeling. Thank you so much for watching. If you have your own story about a time you weren't as alone as you thought, share it in the comments below. We'd love to read them. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more true stories. Stay safe and see you next time.